Welcome to the first of 8 videos for the Roman Army UofW 2021 lecture on combat. And in this first of 8 videos, I'm just going to provide you with some idea of what I'm going to cover and talk about our sources for open or pitched battle. Okay. Right. Here we go. So the idea, first, my friends Pulo, Polly, and Aemilianus got the cut. I'm going to provide or discuss with you a sort of a generic battle, in part because of timing and circumstances. It's not to say that it's always the same at all times. Just there are a lot of things that carry through, and so it's worth giving you an idea of sort of the general features. We'll talk about sources of the battle. We'll talk about the course of battle. It's like open battle, and then we'll talk a bit about sieges. Okay, so the sources for open or pitched battle. An open or pitched battle is the kind of battle you probably think of when someone says, what's an ancient battle like, or a medieval one? So guys lining up in a field or somewhere, two sides usually arrayed in various ways, and they come together, lots of stabbing and sword fighting and so on. We have a lot of evidence of varied quality and consistency. So there's visual evidence, Trajan's column, we've talked about before. All those soldiers, some of them are fighting. There's ones on horseback charging, the aftermath of battle, etc. And there are battle sarcophagi and, even some of the epitaphs that are illustrated show scenes and, get used the way soldiers are holding swords or whatever. We have the military handbooks, which I've discussed from Anasander through Arrian, besides writing a book on tactics, also has the Order of Battle against the Alans, a Central Asian or steppe people. And one of the most valuable accounts that deals directly with battle of some sort or other. And then we have histories, narrative accounts, okay, some of the ones, these are probably what you often think of or turn to when you look at battle. So there is Caesar's Gallic Wars, all the Caesar and friends doing bad things to Gauls and vice versa, sort of. Josephus' Jewish War, very detailed. It's in the discussion for this. Tacitus' various stuff, Agricola, Histories, Annals, and Cassius Dio as well. Now, there are patterns to ancient accounts of battle because a lot of them, at least the narrative accounts, the descriptions are all produced within the same sort of cultural framework, which stays relatively consistent over time. We get a number of things appearing over and over and over. So the numbers, the kinds of numbers that they include or lack of numbers, use of things like myriads and tens of thousands, which is what a myriad is, 10,000. Myriads, for instance, are often used to give some idea of the number of barbarian, non-Roman, or non-Greek, as the case may be, forces. They're not usually meant to be exact. Sometimes they're meant to be exaggerations, so sometimes they are exact, and you can sometimes tell. They often give catalogs of troops, usually more for the whatever side it is that they are most concerned with. So if it's a Roman account writing about Romans versus someone else, then probably there's going to be more detail for the Roman side. And often they give some idea of the opening stage of battle. Lines and arrays, there's speeches often matching between opposing commanders and all sorts of cool stuff. There's often a middle stage where there might be a challenge where one side challenges the other, possibly. And sometimes this challenge comes out in the speeches. There might be single combat, these one-on-one duels. There might be the exchange of missile fire in these accounts, reference to blocking out the sky. The two sides engage and fight, and there's sort of get this almost like this overhead camera sort of zooming around. Here's one side with certain things happening, and here's another side where other things are happening. Before one side gives way, there's a retreat, and enemy soldiers are run down, and the winning side has many more casualties. And now, of course, as you probably already know, if we're looking at narrative sources, okay, the usual focus for much of this, there's problem with a lot of them. What is the focus? Well, they are concerned with the elite. Okay, they're written by elite men, written for elite men, and they describe the performance of elite men. So they tend to leave out the common soldiery, the rank and file, and so on. So to get some idea of how it was for them, we have to look beyond. There are other things missing too. Their explanations don't often match the kind of explanations that we want or usually attribute to why a battle was won or lost. So, to give you a quotation, movement of forces tend to form the backbone of the narrative, with other material stratagems, the brave deeds of individuals, remarkable occurrences like panics, paradoxes, and touching stories included intermittently along the way. Generalship, the performance of generals, what they do, that's usually given pride of place and morale, courage, and values, which leaves things out. Other things that are worth bearing in mind when we think about them is, should we be worried? That you can look at an account like Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian Wars, which includes, a few battles over the course of its length, are an awful lot like the kinds of battles we find in the Wars of Procopius, who's writing almost 1,000 years later. So, again, the sort of consistency in approach amongst ancient historians, which is in large part due to the literary constraints within which they worked, but also you could say the course of battle, how it changed or didn't. Another problem then, if we're thinking about all these issues, looking at these ancient narrative accounts, trying to tease out what of this is real. Is it all rhetoric? Are they just making things more florid to make it more exciting? Perhaps not. Other things to be thinking about is the audience. Who are these things written for? Does the audience, if you made it too flashy and unbelievable, would the audience buy it? And maybe not, since many of them, these elite folks, would have had some experience. So there are a lot of things to bear in mind as we look at them. So what are some of the things we can do to, oh wow, I really went for it, to take account of all of these? Well, you can take the information in a narrative account, try and locate a battlefield. You can try to reconstruct the movements given what detail they provide. You can try and get some idea of what tactics and strategies, and at least in the context of battle, that they used. Try and discern the bias of the writers. They're giving more focus to one side or the other. Do they care about one kind of character rather than another? Try and think, is one style more helpful than another? And then as we're thinking about these accounts, you can look at the slides for this, so I won't get into this. I already sort of mentioned it. And then you can also sort of bring in other things to try and round things out. So you can think about how weapons worked. So if we take the literary accounts and we bear in mind all the conventions, the language they use, the terms they use, the images, who they're writing for, who's writing it, etc. Okay, and the various features. We think about how the individual armies might work. What's possible with humans, assuming humans are vaguely similar that now and then. And if we know something about the weapons that they used and how those weapons worked and how they might have used them, they can give us some idea how parts of a battle might go. If we know how the armies that are participating are organized, then we can get some sense of what was possible in terms of their movement and organization. We can take all this data and try to apply it to lots of other cases. If you want a good example, look at Arian's deployment against the Alans, and it's very specific but very useful. There's all sorts of interesting information that we can bring into this account. I don't have it in front of me because that would have been too easy. But if you look at it, it includes things like archers, infantry, various components, a legion, another legion, and spear and artillery, and we can take all this together and apply it to a particular foe and think about the outcome. Okay, so sources. A short, breezy overview. There's so many cool things about sources. If you want to know more about how ancient battle was written in the past, I would recommend Ted or J.E. Lendon's Rhetoric of Combat, or his 2-part series in 2017 in Greece and Rome on ancient battle. Le fait.